Good morning. My name is Colleen Shogan. I work at the Library of Congress, the Assistant Deputy Librarian for Collections and Services, and I'm pleased to be here this morning to talk to you about some exciting new work that we're working on here at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And in particular, I'm here to talk to you about the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped, which is a program and division within the Library of Congress. And what I'll refer to, this is a very long name for a program, but I'll refer to it going forward as simply NLS, and that's what we refer to it as well. I'm here to give you an overview. I'm not, by the way, I'm a political scientist. I'm not a technologist or an engineer, but I'm here to give you an overview of NLS and this unique program within the federal government. As the slide says, NLS has been in existence since 1931, and the vision of NLS, the vision statement is so that all may read. What NLS is a free program for those who are visually impaired or print disabled to provide what you would call audiobooks, what we call talking books, to United States citizens all across the country. And NLS, to talk to you a little bit about it, there's about 100 people, a little bit over 100 people who work at NLS. Like I said, it is a program or division within the Library of Congress. It's located in the Petworth neighborhood of Washington, D.C., so a little bit apart from where the main Library of Congress campus is situated on Capitol Hill. It has its own appropriation. It has its own funding within the federal government, part of the Library of Congress, but a separate appropriation that's dedicated specifically for books for the blind and print disabled. And currently, right now, NLS receives about $53 million a year in which to do this. Right now, NLS, and this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, the distribution of those audiobooks or talking books is done both through an analog, so physical delivery through the United States Postal Service, and also through digital delivery. And that's how the program works right now. Here's a few statistics about NLS. I'll talk a little bit, give you a little bit about the overview, and then I want to talk to you about how NLS works. This is a little misleading. It says that there's 970-some thousand accounts. That really translates into about 450,000 users across the United States. And in addition to these users, there are about 100 network libraries that partner with the Library of Congress in which to distribute these books. And this is how it works. So if you sign up for the NLS service and you are eligible, once you are determined that you are eligible for the program, you receive an account. You also receive what we call a digital talking books machine, in which you can play analog delivery of these talking books, which is essentially a thumb drive that is sent to your home. You could also bring your own device and download the books digitally through our online website, which is called Bard. So those are the two ways that you're able to get your books. Right now, either way, whether you receive your books digitally or whether you receive them in the mail to play them on your digital talking books machine, most of our users rely upon the librarians at those 100 network libraries for assistance in deciding what books they want to listen to and curating the list of books that are in their queue to be read. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about where we're headed. So that's where we are right now. It's a very successful program. It's a very popular program with obviously our users, the visually impaired community, and also with Congress. But this is where we're headed. We are embarking into a very exciting time, I think, in NLS's history, the Library of Congress's history. We're undertaking a modernization effort for the next 5 to 7 years. And the goal of this modernization effort is to move NLS from a predominantly analog service. Right now, about 90% of our users receive their books in the mail from the U.S. Postal Service to a predominantly digital service. So that's where we are right now, and that's where we want to head. There are some challenges with that because, of course, any changes we want to make in the delivery of our talking books has to take into account our users. And as you might imagine, with a visually impaired community of users, most of our users skew towards the older age spectrum. So we're very sensitive about creating and taking advantage of technologies that will be acceptable and can be used by our patrons and the people who rely upon us for books. We do have a aggressive strategy in the next 5 to 7 years. As I said before, we have currently about 450,000 users across the United States. We would like to increase that to 1 million users across the United States in the next 5 to 7 years as the result of modernization. And really what we're talking about is elevating digital experiences. And what that means to myself and how I think about that is that my vision is for NLS users to be able to consume talking books and read books the same way that you or I are used to consuming books. And that means being able to download and have access to books on demand. If you hear about a book on TV or the radio, or you hear about it from a friend, you're able to download that book. If you read digitally, you're able to download that book immediately and then take it and begin reading it if you so choose. If you don't like that book, or it's not what you expected, you're able to switch streams and download a different book immediately and start that book. And having the ability to be able to do that for myself as a reader has really changed the way I consume books. And it makes for a much more enriching experience. And that's the vision that we want to bring to our NLS users right now. Not that they necessarily have to wait 3 to 5 days for that cartridge to come in the mail, but that they're able to have access to those audiobooks right now online. And where we're headed is relying primarily on a bring-your-own-device model in the future, with perhaps a digital talking book machine that's provided to those users who need it. And we definitely want to move to a technology that's platform agnostic so that we can have people that bring the devices that they're comfortable with be able to use them and take advantage of NLS services. And what we're doing right now is NLS is in the very early stages. We're really in year 0 of this modernization effort, with it kicking off next year. And what we're doing right now is doing small pilot projects to figure out which technologies can best serve our user and patron base in the future. And that brings us to the subject of today's presentation, which is focused on the voice user interface, which is one of the pilot projects that NLS is engaged in this year. So trying to figure out how can we use voice user interface in the future for our patrons who want to search for a book. For example, I want to read biographies, I want to read romances, I want to read westerns. How can they have that interactive experience working with artificial intelligence with a voice user interface that will enable them to get the right books in their queue and that they will be able to enjoy? They also need to be able to listen to those books. Most of our patrons will listen to a book from start to finish. For example, how you might read a fiction book or even most nonfiction books. But other users will want particular books in which they need to skip around. So you have to be able to use the voice automated interface to be able to move to different points in the book. For example, if you were reading a recipe or a cookbook, or if you're reading a travel book, are good examples where you wouldn't read that book necessarily sequentially, but focusing on particular parts of the book that you find interesting or relevant. So right now, where the library is, and we're going to see a demo here from some of my colleagues that I think is very promising. Right now, where the Library of Congress is, we've issued an RFI, request for information, about search, discovery, and playback for audiobooks for the visually impaired using smart speaker technology on a vendor agnostic platform. And that's just our process of gathering more information in this very early pre-stage of modernization so that we're able to make the best strategic decisions in the future for the modernization of our services to the blind, visually impaired, and print disabled. It's also important for us, I will say the last thing that's important for us is security, because the National Library Service for the Blind and Physically Handicapped has an exception to legislation to copyright provisions that enable them to share books to the users of the NLS community, but we want to make sure that whenever we put these books out there, that only our NLS users are being authorized to listen and take advantage of them. So security is also of utmost importance for us and also to our patrons. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues who are going to talk a little bit about their work, their technical work in this area that they've done already, and they will also show us a demo, which is really a product of all their hard work.
Thanks, Colleen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Prabhu Palanisamy. I'm from the SpringML team. We had the privilege of working with the Library of Congress in building the pilot and the demo associated with it. Show of hands, I'll pretend that I will be able to see. How many of you in the room has a smartphone? How many of you have a Google Home or a device in your house? How many of you have more than one device? That's the age we live in, right? Like, obviously, parents in the room knows how their kids are able to make use of the Google Homes effectively than us. Voice interface is becoming the primary mode of communication for many of the applications that are being built today. Here is an image of the talking devices that are being developed, and the technology enablement happened in waves, innovation-wise, at Library of Congress. This was displayed in the hall of the Library of Congress when we were doing the project. So cassette record players, and the one in the middle is the device that is used by the patrons today. They have to go to the library, they have to get the right device in place, and then use it to read books. Like when we were surveying on the project, there were patrons who read like 3 to 4 books a week, and they read at a pace of around 1.75 to 2x compared to a normal reader who is reading visually. They play it fast. They are able to grasp the content much faster than the rest of the people. To level set, right, from a technology project, this is a very, very easy for us to map it. That's the device, that's the technology that they are exposed today, and the solution is right in front of you guys. Like, having a device that they can interact over voice and get the content that they are looking for. To look at it, like, for a general audience, we have ebooks. That's the primary choice that we use these days. Apps, Google Assistant, mobile apps, smartphones that we interact with. And again, the third one is the conversational interface. That's the exposure of technology for common people like us. And how about having this technology to the other folks that we want to enable them? Like Colleen mentioned, they have a vision of making sure that the 400,000 folks are getting enabled and getting the value out of it. In simple terms, this is the vision we wanted to implement on a project. Like sitting in a home or on an evening when they come back, when they say play a book, and the system starts to able to understand the user profile, goes through the security, the authentication, the lookup, and then the book starts to play. Simple terms, but imagine for a moment how powerful the life changes for folks who can get this value. And then from the Library of Congress team, how about we do it for all the books, the journals, publications, where there are asserts that the team has it, and we can enable it for the folks, for a general audience. Now, I think we have set the stage. Okay, this is the device the patrons use, and this is the end goal, like, using a conversational interface and play the books. How did we do it? And what are some of the success criteria to consider for a project like this? Number one, it's a conversational. It's not like a resource. You click on a button or open a page and go through like a normal application. It should be a human conversation. Hey, I'm interested in a science fiction book, or I'm interested in a cooking recipe. Can you list out the books that are of interest to me? I'm interested in a book by a specific author or a genre that I need to look up. It needs to be highly conversational in terms of interaction wise. The other thing is interactive, where it's not about a book and the system plays it. How do we make it more interactive? Like, go to the next chapter, pause, come back to the synopsis of the book, or read me the title and the contents. We want to make it highly interactive, so that way it's not about finding the resource and playing the resource, but how would a human converse and interact with an application. The last and very important one is scale. This is not a project for a certain subset of people or certain subset of books. We want to solve it at scale. When we want to load 100 books, it should be the same process to load 1,000, 10,000, and 1,000,000 books. Imagine for a moment we solve problems, and then in order to scale it, probably enterprise consultants or IT in the room would have gone through the struggle of building a project is one thing, building an application versus scaling that application. We want to do it in one platform that supports this end-to-end pipeline. So without further any delay, I would like to invite Amit Deshpande from our SpringML team to go through the demo of it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Prabhu. So we'll get into the demo. So I'm not sure how many of you have worked on Dialogflow, but all right. How many of you actually worked on Dialogflow? Developers out there. All right. Great. Thanks. So what we've done is we've built a Dialogflow system out here, application. And it's right now in the beta stage. Like Colleen mentioned, it's pilot. And we have tried to make sure that we take care of all the nuances that the library wanted, make sure that it's scalable, it's usable across multiple platforms, right? And highly conversational and all the good stuff. All right, let's get started with the demo. So what I'm going to do is, unlike your usual way of talking to Google and saying, hey, Google, I'm going to trigger it from my mobile. So let's do it.
Sure, getting NLS barred. Sure, welcome to the library. Here you can search for books, play books, or add them to your collection for later reading. How can I help?
Can you read a book for me?
Please specify the title of the book. Check our title list if you are unsure.
Okay. Do you have books by Winterbottom?
Is it 1, Ruth Tarkington, 2, Deborah Biancotti, 3, Michael Corita? Please choose the number.
None of them.
Okay then, we have many books from science fiction to spy fiction to the autobiographies. Say a book title, genre, or author to learn more.
What books on science do you have?
Is it 1, Reena Singh 2, Jay Sinha 3, Amy Siskind? Please choose the number.
Well, what about travel books?
Our available travel books include 1, The Monk of Mokha 2, Timepieces 3, Himalaya Bound. Which book would you like me to play? Choose the book number.
Any more options?
Here are the additional travel books: 4, Eating Eternity, Food, Art and Literature in France 5, A Tokyo Romance, a Memoir 6, The Long Haul, A Trucker's Tales of Life on the Road. Which one would you like to hear? Please say the book number.
What about books on food?
Our available cooking books include 1, Joy of Cooking 2, The Reporter's Kitchen 3, What She Ate. Which book would you like me to play? Choose the book number.
Okay. Play Pride and Prejudice.
Is it Pride and Prejudice?
Yes.
Okay, now reading Pride and Prejudice.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, please visit LibriVox.org. Today's reading, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, chapters 1 to 3, read by Chris Gorringe. Chapter 1.
Hey Google,
It is
pause. All right. So I was able to do a few of the things which Prabhu mentioned already, right? So I was able to log in to Google Home into the application. I was able to search by author names. I was able to search by genres, multiple genres. So I said, let's get some travel books. Let's get books on food. So if you heard the response there, when I asked for books on food, it said, here are books on eating or cooking, right? So it was able to intelligently get the right type of books, right? And then finally, we are able to play the book as well. I'm able to pause it, but we are also having the capabilities to do a fast forward, rewind, start over, all the good things. So there are other features which also are in the pipeline going to be added, like Prabhu mentioned, we should be able to read it at a faster pace instead of this pace. So that's in the pipeline as well. Okay, so let me start with what challenges we faced with this project. So when we started the project, so we were told about the scale of the project, how many users were there, what sort of information we had about how many books were there, and the size of the book. For example, if you want to play some of these audio files, they're really large. I mean, they could be running in GBs, right? They are really large books. We had to get the information instantly. There are millions of books. It should be stored. It should have various categories of information, like the title. You've got various different synonyms possible. You've got author names. And then, like Colleen mentioned, security is a big deal. We had to make sure that the audio files that we are using, they have to be secure, and they are not accessible by anybody else other than the patrons who are already registered with the system. And obviously, we are have to target massive scale so that if the users go beyond millions, we have to take care of that. And as the number of books gets added, we have the system in place which allows the administrators to seamlessly add those books into the system, make it available, right? So all interesting challenges, and more importantly, with Dialogflow, make it extremely conversational and intelligent. That's the key here, over here. So that if someone even says the wrong things, if the books are not there, make sure you propose new ways of searches or different intelligent responses. That's the key part, right? So I'll go over the high-level architecture over here. So if you see, there are 5 boxes. The first 2 are the channels which are available for accessing this system. You got support from Google Assistant on mobile and Google Home. You can use these two channels or Google Mini as well to connect to this particular system, the library. The conversation management obviously is being handled by the Dialogflow engine. And finally, you got the fulfillment, and that's going to be handled by the cloud functions. That's what we've used using Node.js. The cloud functions in turn connect to the Firestore. That's where all the metadata about these books is being stored. So what's the title, what's the author, what are the chapters there, right? And then finally, the storage of the audio files itself is going into Google Cloud storage. So most of the scale issues, obviously, this is what Google is great at, right? I mean, it provides scale. So using the Google Cloud Storage, we were able to upload terabytes of data, no issues at all, right? And we were able to collect metadata about the books, upload it into the Firestore, no issues at all. And it's not mentioned here, but we also had to make sure that the metadata that's getting added into Firestore, we have the right jobs which collect that information and create entities out of that and get it in sync into the Dialogflow. So that's the high-level architecture. So let's go into the flow now. What exactly is happening? What are the systems being used out here? So a user speaks into Google Home, and the first task that happens there is it makes sure that the user who has logged into the Google Home, you have to set up Google Home, and at that point, you obviously need to sign up, right? And that's the information that we are going to use through the whole system. There's SSOs, a single sign-on all over the place, but the start point is really the authentication into the Google Home. So what happens next? So a user speaks into Google Home, and then that request goes into the actions on Google, which is the platform that Google provides for executing your software or actions on the Google Home or the Google Assistant. At this point, the voice recording that was done through Google Home is converted into text, and then it goes into the Dialogflow. When the converted sentence reaches Dialogflow, it's essentially going to take that sentence, convert it into the intents, and extract the entities required, right? Once you have the intent in place, we are connecting this system to the cloud function. So this information is passed to the cloud function, and that's where we have intent handlers in place, which are going to read this information and do the relevant tasks. So what is it that a particular intent is required to do? So let's go to the next slide. So suppose we have to do book search. And when you have to do book search, someone is going to say, all right, I want to get a book based on a certain genre. So the cloud function is going to receive that particular intent, which is to search for a book by a genre, and it is going to the Firestore and making sure we have those kind of books. And if it does, then it returns that particular response, sends it back to the Dialogflow in text, which is then sent back to the actions on Google. And actions on Google is going to convert that text into voice and release it back to Google Home. So that's the flow for the typical searches. And when you want to stream the audio, the same thing happens all over. The request is going to the Google Home, then converted to the actions on Google. The voice is converted to the text, goes to Dialogflow, cloud function. And in the cloud function, we now know that the intent is to play an audio. And when you want to play an audio, then you first want to check if that particular audio file exists or not. So we go to the Firestore, get the information of whether the audio exists or not. And once we find that the audio exists, we have systems in place where we have a mapping essentially that the file which exists in the Firestore, we know that there is a certain file in cloud storage. We go and essentially hit the cloud storage and check for that file. That file is being read back and sent to the actions on Google, and that is what is starting to pretty much play the whole audio file. And once it takes over from there, and it's playing, it's allowing you to pause, fast forward, repeat, start over, and all the good functionalities that Actions on Google provides. So for those who want to know of the technical detail here, like I said, there are huge files involved over here, GBs. So one of the big challenge that we had was, all right, how do we read this up? Like, if you're going to read up GBs of data and put it into memory, you know what's going to happen. It's going to crash the systems, right? So we had to make sure it's streaming. So we used the media object that Actions on Google provides, and luckily that handles streaming brilliantly. We were able to just go forward to like an hour into the book, and it just continues playing. No issues at all. Amazing stuff there, right? We were able to go back, ask it to go back in time, start over, no problems at all. So the streaming was a big deal, and luckily the media object that Actions on Google provides handles that beautifully. And like I said, the security is another interesting aspect, and I have not really mentioned that explicitly in the slide over there, but when you hit the cloud function, there's a second level of security happening over there. So first level is where the Google Home itself is saying that, hey, I've authenticated myself. It goes to Actions on Google, it's authenticated there. And then the SSO passes on, and then Dialogflow says, hey, we're all good with this user. But when it hits the cloud function, what we do is essentially take those credentials back, especially the email ID, and then in the back end, we have the patrons basically registered. So there's a separate system going to be in place, which is registering these users. And the cloud function is obviously that's stored in the Firestore, and we are making sure that those users are authenticated second time, right? And only those users can access the files. And again, the important thing is, since it's copyright, it's stored in the cloud storage, but we need to make sure that it's not possible to download the files. So it's all being streamed. So there's no chance of these files being downloaded. So those are the details that I wanted to present, the demo, the architecture, and the flow. With that, I'll hand over to Dan, who's going to cover what's the art of the possible with Dialogflow. Yeah.
Thanks, Amit. Good morning, everybody. So far what we've heard from Colleen about the National Library Service and its mission to enable reading for the blind and physically handicapped. We've heard from Prabhu and Amit about the pilot that we ran, the various architectures for that pilot, the challenges for that pilot. What I'm going to talk about is going to be will be kind of taking this into the art of the possible. What can we do that we haven't done in the pilot to extend it and kind of add features that will be useful for the patrons? I will go through some key features in Dialogflow, as well as other use cases that are being used with Dialogflow. And we'll also go through the speech-to-text and the text-to-speech APIs briefly, again, with highlight of key features and highlight of case studies that are being used today. So we saw a cool demo. We saw Amit kind of try different things, actually change up. You heard all the ums and ahs and kind of thinking about how to ask the question, kind of all the things that are inherent in human speech. And when you think about it, when we're saying we want the interface to be conversational, what we're saying is I can speak in the affirmative. I can answer a question with yes, or I can answer it with absolutely, or sure, or definitely, or let's go ahead with that. And in a formal interactive voice response system, it's going to be very, very difficult for that system to understand what it is that I'm trying to say. And therefore, you need some system that understands the nuance and syntax of the language to be able to translate that into something very specific and say, get around that, my intent was to move forward. My answer was an affirmative. So when we look at, when we now look, how effective was that demo, and can the patrons use that effectively? The first thing we want to look at is actually something that's called analytics. It's actually available already today in Dialogflow, and when we scale the system to many users, short of just surveying the users, which we certainly want to do to understand how their experience of the system, wouldn't it be nice if we could get a flow tree of what are the intents? And by the way, when we say intents, we're talking about actions. What is it that I'm trying to do? I'm trying to play a book, I'm trying to search a book. Where do the users actually focus? So you're seeing here a depiction, this is direct from Dialogflow Enterprise, and the thicker lines show you the percentage or the more popular flow of that conversation of the intents. And so we know where the users are navigating today. And that gives us a level of insight into what is being used, or potentially what should be changed or enhanced in the system. How many times do we fall back into a no-match action? And what do we need to do about that? How many actions, how deep do we need to go from specifying an intent to actually getting a fulfillment or action behind it, like a playback of a book or the list of books that we're looking for? So how deep is this? And all of that is really important in understanding your in understanding the effectiveness of your model. Now, you also noticed, or you may have noticed, that there are, so Dialogflow can support multiple languages. This particular interaction that you heard on demo was actually set to Amit's preferences on Google Home, or specifically the assistant. So that locale and the dialect can change to suit the patron's user preferences. Now, there's a thing called the conversation style, and it would be naive of me to think that that interaction that you heard is actually going to serve everybody, a full set of diverse set of patrons. And the reason is that, we all have slightly different preferences. I mean, you saw in the demo it said, say 1 for this book, say 2 for this book, say 3 for that book. I may or may not like that interface. I may prefer to just say the name. I may prefer, maybe when I learn it, I may prefer to just say 1 or the first one or the third one, and not have it read out to me that instruction. So the notion of a conversation style is something that can be introduced, right? This is the art of the possible. So to give you a quick example, on the one end of this, I might have a very verbose conversation, right? The assistant, the Dialogflow app comes and says, what do you want to read? I have books of this kind, I have books of that kind. These are the types of instructions you can give me so I can help you find your book. When you make a selection, just like we heard with Amit when he selected Pride and Prejudice, the system came back and said, you selected Pride and Prejudice, is that correct? And he could say, yes, it is correct. So when I'm a first-time user of the system, I want to get that comfort that the system understands me, right? And it knows what it is that I'm trying to do. On the flip side, I might be an experienced user. I want to cut to the chase. Don't give me all this info. Let's just play this book. Think of shortcuts. Think of single utterances. So how can I design a system that, based on my user preferences, will give me the interface that best suits me? Okay, and that's what we're talking about with conversational styles. Now, book collections, think of it much like a wish list or a recommendation engine, right? So as a user, we've already said as a patron, I will log in, I will authenticate. That kind of proves who I am. We know that I've been eligible for the program. We know that's important for digital rights management perspective or purposes. And when I create a book collection, when I say recommendation engine, the first thing a tech audience will say is, yeah, we know what that means, absolutely. But in reality here, what you have is the patrons have a very personal relationship, in many cases, with their local librarians. As Colleen mentioned, they actually get, that they rely on their guidance and knowledge, and they appreciate that. But what we can do here potentially is have these local librarians insert books into your wish list, so that you still maintain that personal interaction, but move forward with you can still augment your system-generated recommendations or personally inserted notes. The other thing is to be able to add annotations and notes to the book. So if perhaps I'm doing some kind of study, think of a study guide where I can add my own notes and information, and I want to maintain that alongside that place in the book, so that I can come back to this later on and perhaps even search on it later on. Content searching, so in the pilot today, primarily you had three things. You had the book title, you had the author, and you had the genre. But what if I want to search for chocolate cake recipes across a corpus of books or content? So now being able to search within the book and have it come back and provide me some options. So that's certainly art of the possible. Dynamically assembling content would be something similar to what I just mentioned, where I'm taking content from multiple places. Every time that Mr. So-and-so has spoken on a particular topic, and I want to get all of those clipped out basically and created into a dynamic book. Think of it that way. Notifications, reminders, again, that could be new content available, that could be my book club book is about to start reading, my class is about to start, just having Google Home notify me. And then finally, real quick on the art of the possible is just what happens to me a lot. I start reading a book and then I get distracted and 2-3 days later I'm back, or maybe 2-3 weeks later I'm back, or maybe even a month later I'm back. And now I've forgotten everything that I've read because my memory needs an upgrade and I just don't remember things anymore. So wouldn't it be nice, similar to TV shows, where you see in the last episode of this is what happened. Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually go back a couple of paragraphs, summarize that content programmatically, and come back with, this is what you read last, just to remind you the context of where you were. And a little bit further into the future is voice-enabled research. I'll move forward in the interest of time. So we spoke about analytics as well already, but sentiment analysis, so think about as the interaction grows and moves forward, what kind of information can I get about the language that is used by the patron, and are they getting frustrated with the interface? Again, a way for us to very quickly assess the effectiveness of an interface. There are training phrases that you use with Dialogflow to train it, and that's how you can tell it how to use different language. And very briefly, the training phrase will actually be taken by Dialogflow, and it'll match it to an intent or an action you're trying to achieve, and will match entities or things that you're talking about within your conversation. It's a way for you to train something that is not so formal in terms of the conversational aspect. I'll move forward past some of the items here, maybe touch on multi-platform real quick. There are a variety of integrations. So for example, I could just as well have used Alexa, Cortana, Slack, Skype, Twitter as integrations into Dialogflow. And the benefit there is having the same engine behind the scenes, but different interfaces from the patron's perspective. And real quick on two of the use cases. You're seeing a bunch of use cases here. I'll touch on two real quick. One of them is Starkey Hearing Technologies. It's a company that makes hearing aids, and they have I guess a brand of Livio and Livio AI hearing aids. And they're actually the world's first healthable hearing aid with embedded sensors and AI. And what they do is they make it easy for their customers who use their hearing aids to understand what features, what settings they can use on their hearing aids. And they actually use Dialogflow to be able to enable that setting so they can talk to their app. They have an app called Thrive, and they can talk to this app and actually enhance the settings that make sense for them through Dialogflow. A second example is a company called Polydice out of Taiwan. And what they did was they built a social network to enable users to be able to find and share recipes, literally. So find and share recipes, and they're using Dialogflow. Why is that interesting? Well, number one is you can talk to it, and you can tell it, this is what I'm looking for, these are my preferences. But secondarily, I'm capturing those preferences, and I can create a recommendation engine behind it for what recipes I might want to give you, or which users I might suggest you share your recipe with. So that's real interesting. So speech API. Speech API is actually broken into two pieces, speech to text and text to speech. Most of these examples that I'm going to talk about are speech to text, but I will touch on text to speech as well. The ability to handle single or multi-channels. The ability to, which basically means that if I have multiple speakers, each one on a different channel, that I'd be able to take that all and incorporate it into a single transcription of what's said. the ability to detect the language. So I can actually provide it with a list of 4 languages that I'm expecting and have it detect the language and transcribe on the fly. The ability to use voice models. This is very interesting. So you have the ability, is the source of the audio a phone call? Is the source of the audio a command? Is the source of the audio a video? And when you think about it, so if it's a command, it's typically kind of almost a single utterance, or something that will be a 2 to 10 second invocation. If it's a phone call, it might be, say, a 4-minute conversation. And if it's a video, it could be 2 hours plus, right? And you might say, Dan, 4 minutes on the phone, there's no ways. And I might be aging myself here, because I remember, phone calls going into hours and hours, way eclipsing the video. Having said that, the youngsters of today are loath to speak on the phone in the first place. So I would say it averages out nicely, right? But seriously, the artifacts that we're looking for, each of those environments brings a different collection of artifacts with it. For example, the command is a single person, right? And usually short utterances. The phone call will be 2 people, but there's static on the line. There might be other things, perhaps 2 to 3 people, depending on the conference. And a video will bring, again, different background noise and a different context. So each one of them can be handled by different models to make it more accurate. Real quick, phrase hints. Phrase hints is a way for us to train the dictionary, so to speak, of the transcription. So at Next, we announced something called anthos. Actually, antho, I believe, comes from the Greek word of flower. Anthos is a new word. Maybe my model doesn't know what it is, right? Well, I can add a phrase hint to say, when you hear this, don't break it out into an gibberish. I want you to actually say anthos. So I'm going to give it as a phrase hint for it to recognize something that I want, and it could be a word, or it could be a sentence. I'll just touch on 2 more here real quick, because I'm running out of time. One of them is speaker diarization. So we talked about multiple channels. We might have 4 people in a conversation. How do we transcribe that? And what we're doing with speaker diarization is we're actually providing a speaker number along with, or a talker number, along with the transcription. So you're seeing the graphic. You got 1 speaker in red, 1 speaker in yellow. What I'm able to do is say, speaker 1 said the following. Speaker 2 followed up with this response. Speaker 1 continued. And it can actually do that for as many speakers as it can recognize within the channel. So as long as it's not too many and too close, it can do that. All right, 2 quick examples here. One of them is on the speech-to-text. VTC Secure is a technology organization that makes services for the hearing impaired or the deaf community. And specifically, they had an initiative where they're helping them find jobs and go through job fairs, and they used the speech-to-text capability to help the hearing impaired actually converse with their interviewer. A second example would be on the text-to-speech side of the house. You may be familiar with Ingram Content, and they're a distributor of many, many books and publications. And what they do is they're actually able to use text-to-speech to provide audio previews and readouts of all the various books that they have. So just, again, interesting use cases for the speech-to-text API. And with that, I will call on Prabhu to take us through the takeaways.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. So if you have any questions, we are happy to answer. If we don't know, Google Home is here, so no issues. To wrap up, right? First, from a project, this is a one where technology was one aspect of it, but really understanding the human interactions, like how users will request for a book, request for to play, request for to search, having that interactions clearly laid out. Then design for scale, like, implementing a project with to load 100 books versus 1 million. We want to have the solution to have the scale and the reach. Then very important, security. These particular resources are copyrighted, not for everyone to log in and go through it. And then integrations. Today, we want to do for a certain platform, like say Google Home, but we want to make it agnostic. If users have their phones that they have Google Assistant with, or any other modes of interaction, we want to have a platform that supports multiple integrations into it. So key takeaways wise, to quickly wrap up: human interactions, conversational style, design for scale, security built into it, and support for multiple integrations. Thanks, everyone.